You may have seen an opinion piece being shared on social media recently called "Twitter is Destroying America." A lot of users have been retweeting it with comments like "completely agree with this" or "great take." In the piece, Damon Linker, a senior correspondent at theweek.com, writes that Twitter, quote, turns politicians, political staffers, reporters, editors, pundits, and analysts into petty, vain, childish, show-offy, hostile, vindictive, dogmatic, impulsive, and careless versions of their best and most professional selves. But here's the thing. Having an account on Twitter doesn't suddenly turn you into a troll with the urge to mansplain, or say something you'll call glib that's really just downright offensive. The message you choose to send on Twitter says more about you than it does about the medium. It's worth taking a moment to put Twitter into context. The platform has 313 million active monthly users. That's about the same number as the population of the United States, which does not contain all the important people in the world, even if @real Donald Trump seems to think so. Politicians and journalists make up more than their fair share of Twitter's engaged user base, and they're often the ones complaining about how it's hurting the way we communicate. One typical complaint is that Twitter has killed nuance, because every idea or thought has to be turned into a punchline with no real context. But there's nothing new about that. For years, politicians' speeches have been written around these sound bites that journalists could be counted on to quote. On top of that, no one's forcing you to squeeze everything you have to say into a single 140-character window. By hitting reply on your own message, you can get your point across with as many tweets as it takes. Journalists like Jeet here have turned this compilation of messages called threads or tweet storms into a whole new kind of article. And look, it's not like there's a little blue bird perched upon your shoulder whispering bad opinions in your ear in 140 characters or less, like this article makes it seem. Those opinions come from you and your own unsolicited thoughts. The main argument of Linker's article seems to be that Twitter makes people say things that are more extreme than what they really believe, for the sake of argument or to appease their followers, and then they're forced to defend those things mercilessly, even if they don't actually believe them. But nobody's making you play devil's advocate. Look, Twitter rage is a real thing. I feel it when a columnist tweets that identity politics is responsible for the rise of Trump, or that hash browns are an appropriate breakfast food, but I'd feel the same way if those bad opinions were in an article, or if someone was saying them to my face. The difference is that on Twitter, much like all social media platforms, it's much easier to act upon those furious feelings you have. But sending whatever you've hastily typed into that blank space requires you to tap the tweet button of your own volition. You could just not. Twitter has given people direct access to powerful journalists and politicians who can no longer just brush off the criticism and comments the way that they once would. Now the whole world expects a reply. That's not to say that mobbing and pylons don't happen on Twitter, but too often people seem to be surprised that their bad opinions are getting criticized. Twitter isn't like writing in your journal, it's more like standing in the middle of a crowded room and yelling. If people don't like what you have to say, they're probably going to tell you. Look, Twitter does have a very real problem, but people responding to your bad opinions isn't it. No, the problem with Twitter is how bad it is at protecting its users, particularly women, from abuse, harassment, and threats. In 2015, the then CEO of Twitter even said as much on an internal forum. "We suck at dealing with abuse and trolls on the platform, and we've sucked at it for years," he wrote. In fact, a 2016 study found that 200,000 explicitly aggressive and misogynistic tweets targeting 80,000 people on Twitter had been sent in just one 3-week period. Twitter has released a few rounds of anti-harassment rules since then, including the ability to mute words in users, and it's kicked a few really abusive users off the platform, but only after their actions turned into media scandals. But none of this is the same as what happens when you tweet something simplistic or offensive and people call you out for it or disagree with your views. So stop blaming Twitter for your bad opinions.